Raise your hand if you've had knee pain while running.
We're going to raise our hand like big boys and girls.
Today we are getting into one of the most common complaints of runners, and that is knee pain. Whether you run 1 day a week, whether you run 7 days a week, whether you run marathons or 5Ks, knee pain is something that plagues every one of us if you run long enough. And we have some answers why. We're also going to talk about what you can do to prevent knee pain, what can you do to heal from knee pain. We're going to talk about, are your shoes the problem? We're going to talk about, is the surface that you're running on the problem? We're going to talk about your volume, your intensity. We're going to talk about the hot topic of foot strike, and we're going to call a few of you out on your sleep habits and maybe your nutrition habits as well. And we're going to throw the big word out there that all of us are terrified of: chondromalacia. We're going to get into all this in a second. Before we do, if you have not already, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on any opportunities to enhance what moves you. Why am I having knee pain as a runner? What have I done? I was going out for my normal run, or maybe I started a run and I've never done before, and my knee started hurting. Why? So if you're one of these folks and you're like, I don't care why my knee's hurting, just tell me what to do, click the box. We'll take you to that other video so you can work on it. But if you are curious to why your knee is hurting, and then you can patiently wait until the next video, stick around. We're going to talk about some of these things that are happening in your knee that you can change right now, that if you're having knee pain will help you to rehab it and get back on the track, get back on the road wherever you're running. Or it can help you prevent knee pain. If you don't have knee pain while you're running, you're one of those select few lucky people, you can implement these things into your training, into your lifestyle, and it will dramatically decrease your injury rates, decrease your knee injury rates, and help you to run optimally and help you to avoid this knee issue. Knee pain is one of the biggest issues that turns runners into non-runners because it gets debilitating. We got to talk about why. There's a lot of reasons why while we're running that knee pain seems to pop up. Is it how hard you're running? Is it the volume that you're running? Is it your shoes? Is it the surface you're running on? Is it because the baby cried all night and you got 2 hours of sleep? Or is it because you're stressed at work? So often the answer tends to be it's a little bit of all of them, but some of these are actually far more important than others, and we can take those into account in your training. But I can say this: if you are having general knee pain, meaning you've been running for a while and your knee's getting achy and it's hurting more and more on the front of your knee, and you kind of want to grab it and point to it, this is the #1 issue that runners have, and it is called chondromalacia. Chondromalacia is the wearing away of the cartilage for runners on the posterior side or the back side of your patella. While you're running, you're putting a lot of miles in, and that cartilage starts to get eaten away by the amount of miles you're putting in, and so many different things, so many different factors go into play with that cartilage eating away your volume, the way your foot is striking the ground, how hard you're running. Again, those stress levels, your water levels, your nutrition, all these things play a massive role, but this is the #1 issue that runners seem to face, is this chondromalacia. Somewhere around 40% of runners are going to deal with this at some point when they're running. Some of them are able to get over it and keep running without having to worry about it, and it ends some people's running career. But it doesn't have to. There's a ton of things that you can do to prevent chondromalacia from getting worse, to take care of it on your own, or to prevent it altogether. So the first thing we need to talk about is your running volume. Now, a lot of people think, oh, I just went for a mile or a 2-mile run. That shouldn't be a big deal. I shouldn't be having knee pain after that. Maybe you're just going for a leisurely run to get your cardio in for the day, or maybe you're actually going after some intensity and you're trying to train for a race. You're trying to train for a 5K, 10K marathon, whatever that may be. The more intense you run, the more friction, the more force occurs through the knee and through the body. So there could be a lot of potential for problems to arise, particularly if you're striking in a certain way. Most people have a heel foot strike. Now, a heel foot strike is something that is not optimal. We want to phase more into a midfoot or a forefoot strike. If you watch videos of the best runners in the world, they're all striking on the forefoot or the midfoot. Striking through the rear foot or striking through the heel simply doesn't make sense. We're basically initiating a braking mechanism. If you've ever watched the Wile E. Coyote videos where Wiley's chasing a Roadrunner, Roadrunner does something to fool Wile E. Coyote and he's about to go off the edge of a cliff, so he throws the brakes on, and as he do that, he shoves his heels into the ground. Every time we do this while we're running, anytime we're running at all, we apply Newton's third law. To any action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Now, when we strike through the heel, that force we're putting into the ground with our heel, with all of our body weight coming into our heel, we're going to have an equal amount of force shooting back up through our heel, into our leg, into our knee, into our hip, and so on and so forth. So when we're putting that heel into the ground, all that's directly coming into the knee. There's no force absorption, there's no spring mechanism, there's nothing in between. When we shift that foot strike to a midfoot or a forefoot strike, all of a sudden we're allowing our plantar fascia, we're allowing the arch of our foot to act as a spring to help dissipate some of that force, dissipate some of that load, as opposed to heel going straight to the knee. Now it gets to go from the midfoot or forefoot through the arch of our foot into our heel, then into our knee. We have created a really powerful pulley system and a lever system to take away some of the impact from that force and allow us to run with more fluidity, allow us to run with less impact, and ultimately save our body some brunt force. This is the most efficient running pattern. We'll pull up some videos of some of those efficient runners, and you can see it just looks so fluid because they're putting their foot in the right position in order that the rest of their body can follow suit. Foot strike is drastically important. It's one of the first things that we go after when we start working with someone who has knee pain from running. We want to shift their running form into a better form so that we can reduce some of the abuse that's happening to the body. Now that leads us into a whole another category of topics here. Let's talk about shoes. Everyone thinks that their shoes is the problem. My knee starts hurting, I need to go buy a new pair of shoes. We don't have much evidence supporting that shoes may be the issue, but if you've ever ran, if you've ever worked with anybody who's ran, then you know that shoes can play a huge role in the striking of the foot on the ground. And that is massively important when we're talking about running. We're spending a huge part of this video talking about it because it's so important. You can get a shoe that helps you to adequately strike the ground, that helps you go to more of a midfoot strike, that helps you go to more of a forefoot strike. There are some great options to help you do that. Maybe you have worked on your running form so much that you can wear a pair of zero drop shoes and still have great optimal running form. Kudos to you. I love my Barefoot Runners. You guys are crazy. I love you because you're putting in the work to actually strike well, because you know if you're not striking well as a barefoot runner, you're going to hurt. If you've ever run without shoes on, you kind of automatically go to a forefoot strike. Why? Because it doesn't feel good to strike through the heel at all. That hurts. So when you barefoot run, you have this great environmental stimulus, this great environmental cue that says, hey, whenever I put my heel down first, it hurts. Let me shift somewhere else in my foot and save myself. There's just great orthotic that we'll put in the description links that I believe is one of the gold standards for helping correct foot strike, and that is an orthotic called ShoeCue. ShoeCue has these weird needles on the heel of the insert. It's an insert that goes into your shoe, and there's these weird needles, so whenever you're running and you land on your heel, it creates a noxious stimuli, a painful stimuli, and that makes you, every step now, you're thinking, I've got to get off my heel because this hurts. Let me get on my midfoot or my forefoot. This orthotic has changed the way that people run and moved them into better running form because of that powerful environmental stimuli. This hurts my heel, let me get off of it and let me shift somewhere else in the foot. I'm curious, we're talking about shoes a lot. Down in the comments, put what type of shoe you're running in, and if you're a heel foot or a midfoot or a forefoot striker in the comments. I wonder if we'll see a correlation between the shoe and the type of heel foot striker you are. We can spend a lot of time on what type of shoe you need to wear to fit your foot, to fit your strike. It's a long conversation, but there are a few we really like simply because they promote a midfoot strike and they promote a forefoot strike, especially if we're using the ShoeCue on top of these. But a few of those, we have the Nike Pegasus, we have the Nike Vaporfly, which is what Eluid Kipchoge ran when he set the marathon record. That's a great shoe. It promotes midfoot and forefoot strike. There's a few others that we'll link to in the description. So what are the shoes landing on? What surface are you running on? I would love to sit here and tell you that we have research telling us that if you run on concrete, your knees are gonna hurt. That leads to more pain than people who don't run on concrete. We simply don't have it. What we do have in the research is whatever surface you choose to run on, whether it be concrete, grass, dirt, sand, the more consistent that you run on that surface, the less likely you are to have pain. So if you're varying up your surfaces a lot, maybe you're changing your surfaces a ton, you're going from concrete one day to grass the next day to sand at some point, that's also fine. You're having variance in your programming, variance in your training stimulus, your body adapts and your body gets used to variables. Now, if you are a runner who constantly runs on grass or dirt, and then one day you shift to concrete, that is where some of the problems occur. That is a change in training that your body was not anticipating, it's not ready for it, and now all of a sudden your injury rates go up quite a bit because you've changed the surface. And it works vice versa. It's not just going from soft surface to a hard surface as concrete. If you're a concrete runner and then one day you decide to run on grass, that has the equal amount of injury risk associated with it simply because you're creating variance in your body that your body wasn't ready for. So does that mean you're glued into one running surface at all times? No, I think the best answer here is to create create some variance. Change it up, change where you're running each week. Give yourself some options so that your body also is ready for variance. So why am I having knee pain if I'm running? We talked about some options here, but there's one option that I want to get into, and it's called the 10% rule. So the 10% rule is anytime you increase your volume greater than 10% or decrease your volume greater than 10%, you increase your intensity, you decrease your intensity. Anything outside of that scope of 10%, all of a sudden you've just increased your risk of injury by 72%. That's insane. Our bodies don't like variance, so when we throw variance into the mix, the body doesn't know what to do with it, and you were fine one day and now you've got an issue the next day simply because your training changed. That's why we have to follow progressive overload. When we progressively overload, meaning that we subtly and over time create that change, create that variance in our bodies and our training methods, we have dramatically decreased our risk of injury. There's excellent ways that we measure this as coaches, as running coaches, as really any type of good coach, whether it be functional fitness, running, swimming, whatever it is. They're measuring the 10% rule. They're measuring your progressive overload. We do that in two ways. Again, the 10% rule, and also something called the acute chronic workload ratio. The ACWR is something we use to determine not only is our training volume and intensity within an area that you're going to progress and get better, but also we know if we go over a certain threshold, we've created a risk of injury for you. If we go under a certain threshold, you have a risk of injury. If we're under a certain threshold, you're not getting any better. If you're over that threshold, you might be overtraining, you might be going into the risk factors. But if we're in that sweet spot, and for the ACWR, it's 0.8 to 1.3. If we're between that space, then we are at an optimized level to continue to increase our performance but stay injury free. Some other factors that are probably just as big, we've got to talk about your nutrition. What are you putting in your body? What are you fueling your body with? You just going out on a run, you don't eat anything before, you don't eat anything after, are you low on carbs, you low on protein? Your body has to have sustenance to be able to perform. If it doesn't have sustenance, it's not going to be able to support things like cartilage. Therefore, chondromalacia is going to skyrocket because you don't have the nutrition to hold your body together. So often we have runners come in and they tell us what they're eating and they're not even getting any protein in. Protein is the rebuilding block of the body. If you're not getting protein in, you can't advance in anything. Water levels. If your water levels are low, that's not as simply as a heart issue, although it is a big heart issue. Your body's going to pull that water from somewhere. It's going to take it from things like your cartilage. It's going to take it from things like your muscles, your brain. When people are dehydrated, your brain is literally smaller because it's lacking water. If you're adequately hydrated, all of a sudden your cartilage, your blood, your muscles, they're also adequately hydrated. And we have just decreased so much friction in our system. We're talking about knee pain while running. That is a friction game. All that impact, all those steps in that mile are creating friction, heat in the knee. We can dissipate that dramatically if we're simply hydrated appropriately because we're going to decrease the friction. We've got great synovial fluid, which is that juice in your body that it's 99.9% water, and allow our body to properly cool and be lubricated for running. Sleep. If you've had a tough night's sleep, maybe you got 2 or 3 hours, it may be best just to put the run off to another time. Your odds of injury go way up whenever you're sleep deprived. We need to be getting 7 to 8 hours a night. And then finally, stress. Maybe you have had just a really tough week. You're about to go on your normal Friday or Saturday run and you're just stressed to the max. Maybe running is that thing that can de-stress you. If it is, I say go for it. But sometimes if you're thinking, I don't want to run, this has been a miserable week, you may not need to. Give yourself a break. Don't do it because your odds of injury are still very high unless you're able just to tailor it back and say, I'm just going to go on a leisurely run. I know some of us, me, I have my plan, I have my program, I want to stick to it. I've got to do my running waves on Friday, therefore I've got to stick with it. Give yourself some grace, give yourself a break, take it easy, decrease your injury risks. As these are some of the major causes of knee pain in runners. We've talked about a lot of different topics, but you can address every single one of these by adjusting your training, by adjusting your lifestyle, and it's simple changes. None of these are drastic changes, these are simple changes. The one that will take the most training is your foot strike. Getting the right pair of shoes could help, but if you're able to change that foot strike from a heel foot strike to a mid or a forefoot strike, it's going to decrease your injury rate, it's going to help you become a better runner, and you might start PRing some times if you shifted that position. Take these tips, use them to your advantage, and don't complain about knee pain if you're a runner because now you know how to fix it. You've got the tools, go out and do it. If you have any questions, hit us up in the comments. We'll be hanging out there for a while. But again, guys, thanks for joining us on the video. It helps us a ton if you can like, subscribe, and ring the bell. It really does. But until we see you again, enhance what moves you.